I think we all know by now about my little visit to this year's Fan Expo and how that ended in near disaster. I still wish I could make a voodoo doll for a convention. But my faith in the convention industry has been renewed thanks to my friend Hamilton Geek inviting me to the second HammerCon in downtown Hamilton 2 weeks ago. What happened? Well, let's take a look. Now, I have to admit, I'm not that big of a board gamer. That's not to say I've never liked playing them, but to be honest, Monopoly gives me enough headaches. I'm also not one of those who thinks that serious roleplay gamers are complete social misfits who haven't discovered deodorant. Case in point.
Make my way up. It's really slow compared to other conventions, but it's fun. I like the people. The people seem a lot more friendlier, and it's a well-knit community with the gamers and everything, so it's cool to see that. You run into a lot of very interesting people, like a lot of obsessive types like people will stand around and talk to you about the same thing for hours, and then they'll get really excited and start yelling, and it's crazy.
It just seems like the games are a lot more convoluted than I really feel like getting into when I'm just trying to have fun with friends. Let's face it, sometimes it's easier to understand the instruction manual to your DVD player. But not all advanced games are created equal. For instance, some are just the same as any other board game, but with bigger pieces and more rules. Others are as simple as making up characters, thinking of the scenario, and just goofing around with friends while pretending to be on a quest. And then there are these, which I can only assume are the really grown-up versions of Risk, and these, which clearly do not take themselves seriously at all. Fine by me. And then there are more experimental kinds of gaming.
So White Wolf is a company that makes a series of games that all take place in something called the World of Darkness. So the World of Darkness is like all those horror movies and all those terrible monsters that you see on the big screen. So you play those guys. We run games at Staircase Theater right now, so our current site, and we run what's called live action role-playing games. So it's like role-playing games meets improvisational theater. Introducing it to people who are new to role-playing games is either easy or difficult, depends on what their background is. So like in Toronto we have a lot of luck because there's like a fairly large and burgeoning theater environment. So pitching it to those guys, super easy, right? It's like, okay, you know all that acting you do? They're like, yeah. Okay, now you do it for fun with a bunch of your friends. He's like, really? It's like, yeah, it's all about creating drama. They're like, okay, we're in. But pitching it to like classic tabletop gamers, a little harder, because they're like, you know all that gaming you do? It's like, yeah. You know all that sitting around a table? Yeah. Okay, so remove all that table and like be forced to go out and socially engage with like 30 people. But it grows on them, right? Because at the end of the day, it's getting like more into the character that you spend all that time on. It's kind of funny watching guys who have like grown up playing D&D, right? And they're like so invested in like this character, and like you take them from like it being all about their stats, and then like 6 months down the road, after they've been LARPing for a while, they're like, oh, I love my character because of these relationships I have, and like all this cool like plot that I've built up. It's a lot more responsibility on the players. So.
Yeah, that to me is the key. Whatever else you can say about grown men and women basically playing with toys and letting their imaginations run wild, it's a very open, social, and democratic way to have fun with people. Not to take away from the accomplishments in the video game industry, but you often need to spend hundreds of dollars just to get started. You're often just pushing buttons or flailing your arms around, and you rarely have to play with other people. That's not the case with more traditional gaming.
I am a little bit biased. I have a 14-year-old myself, and he's heavily into both electronic games and board games, and a little bit into role-playing games and miniatures as well. But I think that there's something about the tactile nature of those games that still very much appeals to just about anyone, but teenagers or the younger audience in particular. There's something there to touch and feel, and there's a social element. So I'm not a person that dislikes video games and thinks that tabletop games are where it's at and where it's always going to be. I think we are evolving and we are moving a lot of things into the electronic space. But I think there's always going to be a niche for tabletop games, and there are certain things that you can do with another human that you just can never do with a computer. I think it really helps to get the games out to a larger audience. I have an iPad myself, and I'm playing Carcassonne on it, and I know Small World has an app for it as well that's done pretty good things for increasing the appeal of that game, or the exposure of a game like Small World to an audience that would otherwise not see it had it not been in an electronic format. It's easier to produce a game, and at the same time it's still a challenge to produce a game really well.
So HammerCon, have you converted me to role-playing games? I'm not sure just yet, but you've definitely made me feel a lot more at ease about it. it's certainly nice to see people having purely fantastic fun without worrying about the red rings of death, unless it's from a level 42 Dark Mage. So if I'm still in the Hamilton area for HammerCon 3, you're probably going to see me there one way or another. That's it for me.